Welcome to Writing Inspiration. I'm Judith Cranswick, and I'd like to tell you about some of the things that influence my crime novels. Apart from my passion for writing, I've always been fascinated by ancient worlds, and many of our holidays have taken us to places like Peru to see the Inca ruins, Mexico for Aztec and Mayan remains, Cambodia to learn more about the ancient Khmer, and China and Uzbekistan to the great cities on the Silk Route. On a recent visit to the British Museum, I went to a talk in the Mesopotamia Gallery, where civilization first began. Our volunteer guide explained the various cities, exhibits, and we came to a model of the excavation at Ur. In charge of the dig was the archaeologist Sir Leonard Woolley. His assistant was a young man called Max Mallowan. When Max got married, he asked if his new wife, who was also an archaeologist, could join the team. Woolley's wife Catherine objected in no uncertain terms and said that one woman on the dig was quite enough. Well, there is one thing you never ever do, and that is upset a crime writer. Max Mallowan's wife was none other than the queen of crime herself, the great Agatha Christie. And this photograph shows Agatha and Max sitting on the rock, and the gentleman standing next to them is Sir Leonard Woolley. And here they are at the excavations at Ur in 1931. So, did Agatha get her own back? You betcha! In her novel, Murder in Mesopotamia, the wife of the chief archaeologist is not exactly a very likeable character, and the reader feels very little sympathy when she comes to a particularly nasty end. And the archaeologist in charge doesn't come out of it very well either. According to our guide, a great deal of what happens in the book is reflected on what was happening at the dig itself. Now, the point of this story is not beware crime writers. I can assure you we are quite nice people. We take out our vengeance on the written page. No, the point is we writers write about what we know. You've only got to look at my book covers to see that my main inspiration is travel. It's one of life's great pleasures. I'd had moderate success with my first two published novels, but then my agent suggested that it would be much easier for her to sell my books if I had a series character. And I thought about it, and I came up with the idea of a tour manager for a coach company. This would give me a limited number of people, a driver who could be her confidant, and it would have the added advantage that each novel could take place in a different country. Now, what better excuse could there be for more travel? Location is very important to me. In each novel, I wanted to make sure that the country was part of the story so that it couldn't have happened anywhere else. The first novel, Blood on the Bulfields, is set in Holland, begins in the Bulfields at Keukenhof. The second, Blood in the Wine, is set in the Rhine Valley. Blood and Chocolate, well, even if you can't recognize the town hall in the main square of this capital city, I'm sure the title Blood and Chocolate will have suggested that this is Belgium. Blood Hits the Wall is set in Berlin, and the latest novel, Blood Across the Divide, which I'm hoping will be out by Christmas, That is set in Belfast and Northern Ireland. So what I'd like to do is to talk you through the process that I go through in writing a novel. Let's take a look at the very first. Now, I'd been to Holland several times, and I was intrigued by the idea of finding a dead body in a beautiful place like Keukenhof. And the idea really grew from there. If you think of Holland, you think of Amsterdam. And one of the main industries there, of course, is diamond smuggling. And if you're thinking of writing a crime novel, of course you start thinking in terms of smuggling. And like every good writer, I did my research, and I discovered that smuggled diamonds are often conflict diamonds or blood diamonds. And what's more, they are funded by and provide the finance for various terrorist groups, including Al-Qaeda. And if you have terrorism in the novel, you're going to have an anti-terrorism unit. And thus, the ideas began to go round my head, ready to write the very first Fiona Mason novel. I had to go back. And while everyone else was taking photographs of beautiful bulbs, there was me. Where can I hide a dead body? Now in Keukenhof, I was up on the mill, and looking over into the corner, I spotted a cafe, but it was closed. So I went and took a closer look, and round the back was a very large skip. Ideal. Now, on our first trip to Holland, we'd taken plenty of photographs of the Dutch National Monument. And this is a very popular place for groups to meet up. And when I came to write that section in the novel, however, I could not remember if the monument had steps or a wall at the base. Now, that was quite important because one of Fiona's passengers isn't feeling too well, and she needs to sit down while she's waiting for everyone else to arrive. When you're writing about well-known landmarks, as a writer, you cannot afford to get it wrong, because your readers will know. And if you make a mistake, then you've lost their confidence. So, my preferred way of working is to visit an area before I start. I go to the country and I soak up the atmosphere, and I start thinking about what could be the main idea for the plot. And then, when the book is almost finished, I like to go back and check up on all those details, the little things that I need to get right. Research is a crucial part of writing a novel, and I would never dream of setting a book somewhere that I have not visited myself. When it came to writing Blood in the Wine, I decided to take a coach trip. Now, much of what happened on our coach tour ended up in the book, including what happened on the very first night. We were travelling to Germany, but we had an overnight stop at a hotel on the Belgian border. And coming down to breakfast the next morning, I slipped on the bottom 2 stone steps and badly ripped my ankle. Now, having to spend all day on the coach to get to Aschmenhausen, a little village next door to Rudesheim, where we were staying, my ankle was very, very painful. So when the girl on the reception desk gave me my key, I didn't really bother to listen to her instructions. I mean, how difficult can it be to find room 25 on the second floor? Well, I'm afraid the answer to that is very difficult. If you look at this picture, this is coming up from the side of the river. We're going up the valley side, and the road splits. The hotel is right in the middle of the road. So the hotel is triangular shaped. And more than that, because it's built on a very steep hillside, there is no such thing inside as a straight corridor. No more than 2 rooms are adjacent. After that, you're either turning a corner and going up steps or down steps. Now, that incident is actually in the book. But having said that, nothing goes into a book as padding. Everything you write is there for a reason. So, it must be either a clue or a red herring. It isn't actually only my Fiona Mason novels that have been inspired by travel. An idea came to me while we were on holiday in the Galapagos, which was never intended to be a research trip. One day we were visiting an island, and walking along the shore, we came across this sea lion, and in its jaws it held an enormous tuna fish, which it was batting from side to side, rather like a crocodile does. And I said, as you do, what if this were a human arm? Well, that isn't in the book, and at that point I still didn't intend to write a novel. That came on the very last day, when we were taken to the island of Floriana into Post Office Bay. This is the post office. Originally, in the 19th century, the whalers who used to write letters home on that long journey out from Europe, they would drop their letters off in a barrel. And the sailors who were returning from their 6-month stint in the fishing grounds, they would bring them back for the families living in the town to which they were returning. Now, that idea survives today because it's now a tourist attraction. You put a postcard into the barrel and you take one out that's destined for your own home country. And that did become the start of A Death Too Far. The sister of the main character has recently died on holiday in the Galapagos. But weeks after the inquest and the funeral, my character receives a holiday postcard. But what she can't understand is, why does it have a British stamp on it, and why is it postmarked Plymouth when they don't know anyone in that particular town? And that's really the start of her investigation into how her sister met her death. Now, writers are never short of ideas, and I do hope this short presentation has given you some idea of the things that inspire me. Thank you so much for listening.